She cut it down while he was still inside. That's what I told the 911 dispatcher. My hands were shaking, slick with sweat and sawdust. But my voice? Cold. Flat. Like something inside me had snapped into place. Because 5 minutes earlier, my nephew Evan was pretending to be king of Fort Kickbutt. And now? He was somewhere beneath a collapsed pile of lumber, crying, crushed, and covered in blood. The woman who did it? Karen Dunn, president of the HOA, neighborhood tyrant, and self-appointed protector of property values. She called our treehouse an eyesore, an unapproved structure, a violation of 17 different covenants, she said. So she took a reciprocating saw and cut through the main support beam. While Evan, 8 years old, barely 50 pounds, with a SpongeBob Band-Aid on his elbow, was still inside. You ever hear the sound of a fort collapsing with a child screaming inside? I hope to God you never do. It was like the earth itself cracked open, wood splintering, metal twisting, then the silence. The kind that drops like a curtain before panic begins. "Karen, stop!" I had yelled. She didn't even flinch. Her eyes were locked on the post like it was her mortal enemy, like the only thing standing between her and some perfect little postcard street. Evan screamed, and that's when my military training vanished. All that calm discipline? Gone. I sprinted, tore at boards. Sawdust stung my eyes. My throat burned. But I kept digging. He was under the far beam, pinned, his leg bent wrong. His face? Still trying to be brave for me. That's Evan. Always brave. Paul, my neighbor, called 911. Mrs. Gwynn, from across the street, was crying on her porch. Karen? Still holding the saw. Still standing there. Sawdust around her like smoke from a crime scene. Deputy Torres arrived first. He saw me kneeling, bloody hands, saw Evan, saw Karen, saw the tool. He didn't need a witness statement. But he got one anyway, Mrs. Gwynn. Pointed right at Karen. She cut it down while the boy was inside. Torres turned to Karen. "Ma'am, I need you to put the saw down." She didn't move. "This is my right. I'm enforcing HOA bylaws," she muttered. "Put it down," he said again. This time, she did. He cuffed her right there on the lawn. Didn't even hesitate. Charged her on the spot, aggravated assault and child endangerment. But I knew that was just the beginning. Because justice isn't just handcuffs. Justice is truth, exposed. And I was about to bring every last ounce of it to light. Where are you watching from? Ever dealt with an HOA nightmare like this? Because what she did next nearly shattered everything I had left. My name is Mark Hale. Most days, that doesn't mean much. Just another name you scribble on forms at the DMV or sign under bills. But on that day, the day my nephew screamed from under a pile of splintered pine, it meant something. It meant I was the only man there to fix it. I wasn't supposed to be back here. Truth is, after 10 years in the Army and 2 in private security overseas, I'd planned on disappearing somewhere quiet. Mountains maybe. Grow a beard. Learn to fish. Let the silence heal me. But then my sister called. She said, "Mark, I hate to ask, but I need help." Her husband had taken a new construction job out of state, months away at a time. And Evan needed a man around, someone to build things with, someone to steady the ground. So I came home, moved into the guest room of a little yellow house with peeling paint and too many wind chimes, and I didn't mind. Because Evan, he's not just a good kid. He's the kid. The kind who puts jelly beans in your coffee when you're not looking, who calls you sir just to annoy you, who names his tree fort Fort Kickbutt and tries to pass it off as a strategic military post. That Saturday morning started perfect. Sunlight sharp through the oak branches, sawdust swirling like gold in the air, my boots planted on the side yard dirt. Evan standing proud on the half-built platform, hammer in hand. He was the foreman. I was just the guy with the drill. We built slow, measured twice, cut once, used deck screws, not nails. Solid wood. Because when you build something for a kid, you build it like it's sacred. Because to them, it island. We had 3 walls up, a crooked window Evan designed himself, a rope ladder half-tied and tangled, He was ruling his imaginary kingdom from that fort, making laws about extra dessert and banning bedtime. And just across the street, Karen Dunn was watching. I caught her staring from behind her porch columns, arms crossed, lips pursed. She wore her usual Saturday outfit, a crisp navy blazer and a clipboard. Always the clipboard. You see, Karen wasn't just an HOA president. She was a tyrant with stationery. The kind of person who believes rules are more important than people. The kind who dreams of power in cul-de-sac form. She'd left us notes before, tucked under the welcome mat. Things like, your garbage bins are visible from the street. Grass height exceeds 3.5 inches. Unapproved construction noted. This is your second warning. I used them to start the grill. True story. I figured she'd lose steam eventually, but I underestimated her obsession, and I had no idea she'd turn that obsession into violence. Not yet. Evan looked down at me that morning and said, Uncle Mark, you think she hates forts? I laughed. Nah. She just hates joy. I wish I'd been wrong. The first real clash came on a Sunday afternoon. I was tightening bolts under the frame while Evan narrated a battle between space lizards and peanut butter pirates. The sun was dipping behind the magnolia tree, and the scent of fresh lumber mixed with grass clippings in the warm breeze. That's when I heard the sharp tap-tap of hard shoes on concrete, and the telltale flutter of clipboard paper. Karen was coming. She didn't knock, didn't clear her throat, didn't even pretend to be neighborly. She stood at the edge of the yard like it belonged to her, her posture perfectly rigid, her expression what you'd expect from someone forced to smell a dirty sock. Then came her voice. Mr. Hale, you are in violation of Section 7. Article 4. No freestanding structures exceeding 4 feet in height are permitted without prior written approval from the HOA board. I stayed crouched by the beam, wiped sweat off my brow with the back of my hand. Karen, it's a kid's treehouse. She flipped a page. Didn't blink. Unauthorized construction, visible from the street, constitutes a Tier 2 infraction. I stood, slowly, met her gaze. Her eyes were icy, but behind them something twitching, like she wasn't just enforcing rules, she was enjoying it. Evan peeked around from behind the wall, dirt on his cheek, smile fading. I gently motioned him back with one hand. Look, I said, we're almost done. It's not permanent. It's not hurting anyone. She cocked her head. The bylaws are not subjective, Mr. Hale. Then she leaned in. You may be used to bending rules wherever you were stationed, but this is a private community. We have standards, discipline. If you won't dismantle it, the HOA will. She turned on her heel and marched off, blazer flapping in the wind like a cape of self-importance. I watched her go. Not because I was intimidated, because I was trying to decide if she was bluffing or if she was. The kind of person who meant every word. Evan came back around the corner, quiet now. Uncle Mark, is she going to tear it down? I forced a smile. Not if I finish it first. We worked faster that day. Screws turned tighter. Walls went up straighter. But I'll admit something gnawed at me, because I'd seen that look before. Overseas. In the eyes of men who believed they were above consequence. Men who thought a uniform or a rule book made them gods. And Karen Dunn? She wasn't just an angry neighbor. And those are the most dangerous kind. 2 days later, a red sign appeared at the base of the treehouse. Stop work order HOA enforcement. All caps, all threat. Staked right into the lawn like we'd built a meth lab instead of a tree fort. It flapped in the wind like a warning flag, a message not just to us, but to the whole neighborhood. Look what happens when you disobey. I pulled it out, crumpled it, tossed it in the garage. Didn't say a word to Evan. He was already getting quieter these days. Not scared, just watchful. That night, a letter slid under our door. Typed, double-spaced. Signed, President Karen Dunn, on behalf of the Willow Crest HOA Board. But we all knew who wrote it. Due to repeated violations and non-compliance, the Willow Crest HOA reserves the right to seek enforcement through legal and structural remedies, including but not limited to removal of said structure without further notice. Structural remedies. What a cold way to say, we're going to tear your kid's joy to the ground. My sister wanted to call a lawyer. I told her to wait. I've seen people like this burn themselves out, I said. But I'd forgotten. Karen had no off switch. Then, she disappeared. 3 full days. No clipboard, no threats. No passive-aggressive leaflets tucked under our wipers. At first, I thought we'd won. That maybe her HOA reign had finally hit a wall. Maybe the board reined her in. Maybe, just maybe, she'd let a kid be a kid. I was wrong. She wasn't retreating. She was planning. On the 4th day, a new SUV showed up in front of her house. Unmarked. Tinted windows. Then a landscaping truck. Then a guy with a measuring wheel and a drone. I watched from the porch as they traced property lines, filmed from the air, marked the base of the tree with spray paint. They were drawing battle lines. That night, Evan said something that stopped me cold. "Uncle Mark, if she tears it down, does that mean she wins?" I looked at him, and for a second, just a second, he looked older than 8. He looked like a boy learning the world didn't always protect the innocent. I knelt down and put a hand on his shoulder. "She only wins if we let her." He nodded, didn't smile, just went back to the fort, hammered one more board into place, hard, and then came the morning, the one I'll never forget, the one with the scream, the crash, and the sound of my nephew's world falling. But before we go there, you need to understand something. Karen didn't just hate that treehouse. She hated what it stood for. A black family. Joyful. Loud. Unbothered by rules she wrote for herself. And when people like her feel powerless, they don't walk away. They destroy. It happened at 10:13 a.m. Not that I needed a clock. That moment tattooed itself into my bones. The morning was quiet. Sky washed in soft gold. Wind barely enough to stir the chimes. Even Karen's house looked still, shutters drawn, blinds shut tight. I was inside, pouring coffee. Evan was already in the fort, finishing the last touches. He'd made a cardboard flag the night before. It read, "Fort kick butt, no Karens allowed." We laughed so hard when he held it up. And then, the sound. It started as a buzz. Mechanical. Familiar. Like a saw. At first, I thought it was someone trimming branches down the block. But then it got closer. Too close. I bolted out the back door, and what I saw hit me like a brick to the chest. Karen kneeling by the base of the tree, cordless reciprocating saw in hand, grinding it into the main support beam. No gloves, no safety glasses, no warning, just cold precision and rage. Evan screamed. He was in the fort, trapped. I ran, shouted, "Karen, stop!" She didn't. The blade chewed through the last inch, and then it all fell. The groan of breaking wood. The crack like a tree splitting during a storm. A heartbeat of silence. Then the crash. Dust. Screams. Wood and nails and dreams in a heap. And Evan somewhere beneath it all. Everything after that blurred into instinct. I dropped to my knees, tore through boards. My hands bled. Didn't care. He was crying, thank God. He was crying. But then I saw his leg, bent at a wrong angle, like a marionette dropped mid-pose. His face was pale, still trying to smile, still whispering, "It's okay, Uncle Mark." And that broke me in ways war never could. Neighbors gathered, phones out. Gwyn was crying. Paul stood frozen. And Karen, still standing there, sawdust in her hair, breathing heavy, like she'd just done yard work. I turned to her. Couldn't even speak. My throat was raw with fury. Deputies arrived in under 4 minutes. Torres saw it all. The wreckage, the boy, the saw still buzzing in Karen's hand. He didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. He cuffed her right there. Read her rights, while Evan whimpered on the grass. Karen tried to speak, maintenance, community safety. But nobody listened. Because the street wasn't staring at me anymore. They were staring at her. The HOA queen, caught in the act. I held Evan's hand, whispered, "You're safe now. I got you." But in my heart, I knew this wasn't over. Because while Karen was in cuffs, the HOA still stood behind her. And I was about to go to war. They say war changes a man. I say it reveals him. Back in Kandahar, we had a saying, Don't wait for the bullets to tell you who you are. I was 22 when I learned what that meant. A market bombing. 2 children siblings caught in the blast. The medics were overloaded, the crowd screaming. But there they were, 2 little faces, dust-covered and silent. Everyone froze. Everyone but me. I didn't think. I just moved. But that moment, that was the first time I understood. Justice isn't always about courts or rules. Sometimes, it's about choosing to act when no one else will. That same fire came back when I saw Evan trapped under the wreckage. That same steel in my spine. But this time, the enemy wasn't foreign. It was a woman with a clipboard, drunk on authority. You know what hurts most? It wasn't just the broken boards or the broken leg. It was the betrayal. Karen lived 3 houses down. She waved at my sister. Dropped candy into Evan's pumpkin bucket every Halloween. She knew his name, knew he played there, knew exactly what she was doing, and still she chose the rules over the boy. The night after the crash, I sat beside Evan's hospital bed. His leg in a cast. His arm hooked to an IV that beeped every 10 seconds. He was watching cartoons, pretending to be fine. But I saw it. That flicker of something deeper behind his eyes. A scar that wasn't physical. And I made a promise. Not out loud, not for him to hear. But to myself. No matter what it takes, I'll make this right. Not just for Evan, but for everyone Karen's hurt. Because this wasn't just a treehouse. This was a battle over who gets to feel safe. Whose joy matters. Whose family gets to be seen as belonging here. Karen didn't just tear down wood and nails. She tried to tear down us. And I had no intention of letting her win. The next morning, I got up early. Put on my old boots. Found the military duffel in the back of my closet. Inside, a GoPro, my service record, a worn leather notebook, and the flash drive I never thought I'd need again. Because I wasn't just going after Karen. I was going after the entire system behind her. You don't survive 3 tours without learning how to plan an op. And this? This wasn't just payback. It was strategy. HOAs hide behind paper, behind bureaucracy. But every policy, every fine, every silent nod in those board meetings, it leaves a trail. So I started digging. First stop, the HOA bylaws. Not the watered-down welcome packet they hand out to new homeowners. The full charter, buried online behind 4 password-protected PDFs and a login from 2008. I read every word, every footnote, every contradiction. And guess what? Treehouses weren't prohibited. Turns out, detached accessory structures under 10 feet were allowed with neighbor approval. Not board approval, neighbor. Evan's treehouse? 8.6 feet tall. I had 2 neighbors on record who loved it. Karen had lied. Next stop. Public records. The county clerk's office was a gold mine. I found citations Karen issued under her own name, even though only the board, as a whole, had enforcement authority. I pulled up invoices. She'd used HOA funds, our money, to pay for that landscaping drone, the private contractor, and the stupid red sign, all without a vote. Illegal expenditures, unauthorized actions, and worse, targeted harassment. Then came the real breakthrough. Paul, my next-door neighbor, stopped by one evening. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder. I wasn't going to say anything, he muttered. But, Karen? She's done this before. I froze. What do you mean? She had the Johnsons fined for painting their mailbox without approval. Had a kid's trampoline hauled off the lawn. Last year, she told the Wilsons they couldn't fly a Juneteenth flag. Said it wasn't community neutral. I asked the same question you're thinking. Why didn't anyone stop her? Paul just sighed. She's loud. Pushy. Writes people up until they give in. Most folks just want peace. But I didn't want peace. I wanted truth. So I built a timeline, printed emails, screenshots, photos of the sawed beam, statements from neighbors, hospital records, even the HOA charter violations, all cataloged, organized, cross-referenced. Then, I did what Karen never expected. I filed a formal grievance with the HOA Oversight Committee at the county level, attached 48 pages of evidence, cited 8 charter violations, 3 state housing laws, and included the sheriff's arrest report. Then I CC'd the local news. That was just the beginning. Because if Karen wanted a war, she just got one, and I never enter a war I don't intend to finish. The HOA held its monthly board meeting in the clubhouse, a beige stucco box with stale coffee and folding chairs that always squeaked too loud. But that night, it was packed. Word had spread. Neighbors who never came to meetings showed up early. Some brought popcorn, others brought questions. I wore jeans, a flannel, and the same boots I'd worn in the desert. Didn't need a suit to deliver the truth. Karen? She showed up late, hair slicked back tight, white blouse, stiff as her posture. Clipboard clutched like a shield. She didn't look at me. Didn't have to. She knew. The board chair opened with routine business. Trash schedules, lawn complaints, mailbox repainting. Then he looked at me. Mr. Hale, you submitted a grievance? I stood, cleared my throat. I did. I handed him a folder. He flipped it open. Brows lifted. This is extensive. Because this wasn't just about a treehouse, I said, voice steady. This was about abuse of power, targeted harassment, and a felony act of violence against a child. You could feel the air tighten. I plugged in a USB stick, clicked the first slide on the projector. Up came a photo. Karen, reciprocating saw in hand, caught mid-cut, time-stamped, clear as day. Gasps. Whispers. Slide 2. The treehouse wreckage. A close-up of the beam with jagged teeth marks from the blade. Slide 3. Evan's hospital record. Broken femur. Nerve bruising. Recommended therapy for PTSD. Slide 4. The HOA charter, highlighted. No board member may act unilaterally in enforcement without vote and documentation. I didn't yell, didn't accuse, just let the truth hang like a hammer. And when I was done, I turned to Karen. For someone obsessed with rules, you broke every single one that matters. She tried to speak. Something about intent and a miscommunication. But her voice trembled. And then Paul stood up. I back everything he said. Karen's been out of control for years. Then Mrs. Harris, whose lawn flamingos were once removed without notice, nodded. Then the Johnsons. One by one, neighbors spoke, voices that had been quiet too long. The board chair held up a hand. We will convene privately. Effective immediately. Karen Dunn is suspended from all HOA authority pending investigation. You'd think that was the victory, but I wasn't done. Because that night, I dropped a second folder to the sheriff's department. Inside, financial discrepancies from HOA funds, private contractor invoices signed solely by Karen A., witness statement from the landscaper. She told me to cut it down without telling the parents. Said they'd learn when they saw the mess. This wasn't just a case of a power-hungry neighbor. This was criminal. And I was just getting started. Karen didn't go quietly. The day after the board meeting, she filed a counter-complaint, claimed I doctored photos, incited a neighborhood mob, and manipulated a vulnerable child for sympathy. She even tried to spin the treehouse collapse as an accident. Said she was removing a dead limb that posed a danger. Never mind the video, the hospital records, the saw. But it was enough to buy her a moment, a pause in the storm, until the sheriff called me in. He slid a folder across the desk. Mark, we got something. Inside, a body cam screenshot. One of the deputies who responded had his camera running as Karen was cuffed. It caught everything. But more importantly, it caught what she muttered under her breath. I told them to move the damn thing. They didn't listen. That's on them. Not remorse, not confusion. Intent. They added a second charge, felony reckless endangerment, and began building a case for malicious destruction of property, a serious offense in our state, especially when a child is harmed. Then the final nail came from an unlikely source. The landscaper. Remember him? The one she hired to map the yard? He came forward. Said Karen told him a week prior to scout the area because she planned to have that eyesore removed. Claimed it was ruining the resale value of her side of the street. Said she wanted a clean line of sight from her kitchen. Not safety, not rules, property value. She didn't see Evan's treehouse as a child's joy. She saw it as a blemish on her perfect view. The DA took it seriously. The charges stuck. And Karen Dunn went from clipboard warrior to criminal defendant. Meanwhile, Evan was healing. His cast came off. He smiled more. Even asked if we could build another fort. But maybe this time, underground, he joked. But the scar on his leg wasn't the only one. Every time we drove past Karen's house, he'd tense, quiet. Like part of him was still waiting for the next attack. That's when I knew justice couldn't just be about courts. It had to be public, permanent. So, I called a reporter, told them everything. Not for revenge, but because no other kid should have to learn that power can come in the shape of a saw and a smile. Karen wanted to silence us. Instead, she gave us a voice, and we weren't done speaking yet. The article hit front pages on a Tuesday. HOA president faces felony charges after treehouse collapse injures child. The photo, Evan's cast, painted with superhero stickers, next to the wreckage. The byline, by Danielle Romero, investigative reporter. She'd gotten everything right. The timeline, the quotes, even the body cam transcript. But what made it powerful, what made it spread, wasn't just the facts. It was the pattern. Danielle dug deeper than I ever could. She found court records, old HOA minutes, neighborhood complaint logs dating back 7 years. Karen had a history. 2019, threatened a veteran for putting up a pride flag. 2020, fined a single black mother for leaving a stroller on her porch overnight, then raised exterior non-compliance penalties to $200. 2022, reported 2 Latino teens to police for loitering near the community pool. They lived there. Every time, she used rules as weapons. Every time, her targets looked like us. Within hours, the story went viral. Local news, then state. Then national blogs picked it up. Karen with a chainsaw trended on Twitter. HOA memes flooded Reddit. But the attention brought something else. Emails. Over 40 messages poured in from neighbors, then dozens more from across the state. She threatened to fine us for painting our shutters. We left because of her harassment. She told me certain families lower property values. They weren't just complaints. They were witnesses. And they gave the DA what he needed. A pattern of selective enforcement, a discriminatory motive, an abuse of public authority under the Housing Fairness Act. New charges were filed. Not just assault civil rights violations. Harassment under color of law. Karen's lawyer quit 2 days later. The HOA board released a statement. We were unaware of the extent of Miss Dunn's actions. We denounced them entirely. But that wasn't enough. Residents demanded more. A recall vote was triggered. The board was forced to dissolve temporarily under county oversight. A new interim president, Mrs. Harris, was appointed. And the best part? The bylaws were amended. HOA presidents could no longer issue fines unilaterally. Every complaint required board review. All meetings would be recorded and archived publicly. Karen didn't just lose her title. She lost her power. But Evan still hadn't stepped outside, not alone. So I took him for a walk. Just the two of us. Back to the tree stump. He looked up at me. Can we build it again? I nodded. But this time, I said, we build it bigger, higher, stronger. And they're going to help us. He blinked. Who's they? I pointed to the neighbors, stepping out, one by one, tools in hand. Karen tried to divide us, but in the end, she made us a community. The courthouse was cold, not in temperature but in tone. Marble walls, fluorescent lights, pew-like benches, and one chair front and center where Karen sat alone. No clipboard, no blazer. No army of bylaws behind her. Just a woman, in beige slacks and a wrinkled button-down, who finally looked small. The courtroom buzzed when the judge entered. An older black woman, stern but composed. Her gavel struck once clean, loud. This is case #4792, State of Georgia v. Karen Louise Dunn. The charges were read aloud. Felony assault of a minor, malicious destruction of property, harassment under color of law, violation of civil rights, state housing statute. Each count felt like a drumbeat. Karen pled not guilty to all. Her lawyer, new, court-appointed, fumbled through his papers, made weak arguments about miscommunication and no intent to harm. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, swore in. Saturday tall. I told them everything. From the saw's scream to Evan's cast. From the HOA's silence to the neighbors who'd been bullied for years. I didn't raise my voice, didn't ask for pity. I just told the truth. And when I finished, I pulled something from my coat pocket, a folded, taped-up piece of cardboard. Evan's flag. Fort Kickbutt. No Karens allowed. The jury stared at it in silence. Closing arguments came and went. The judge recessed. The jury deliberated. 4 hours. And then they returned. The foreman stood. Read the words that made the whole room hold its breath. We, the jury, find the defendant, Karen Louise Dunn, guilty on all counts. Guilty. The word echoed like thunder. Karen didn't cry, didn't scream. She just sat, blinking, like the walls were finally closing in. The judge handed down sentencing: 18 months in county jail, 3 years probation, mandatory community service in underserved neighborhoods, permanent removal from any HOA leadership position statewide, and again, restitution order to Evan's family for medical bills and emotional trauma. The courtroom clapped, not wild applause, but the slow, heavy rhythm of relief, the kind that says, it's over. Finally. Outside, news crews swarmed. Cameras flashed. Microphones were shoved in my face. But I didn't stop. I walked past them, through the parking lot, straight to the hospital where Evan was waiting with a comic book and a chocolate milk. I knelt beside him. It's done, kid. You're safe now. He grinned. Can we build it today? I nodded. No more sneaking. This one's going up with permits, blueprints, and a neighborhood barbecue. Because justice isn't just a courtroom word. It's action. It's protection. It's a treehouse rebuilt by many hands and guarded by truth that doesn't blink. We broke ground on a Saturday. Blue skies, laughter in the air, the scent of sawdust and fresh-baked cookies drifting from one porch to another. Neighbors came out in droves. Paul brought his power drill. Mrs. Harris showed up with lemonade and folding chairs. Even the Johnson twins, who barely spoke to anyone before, were hauling lumber like champs. And Evan? He was right in the center, hammer in hand, goggles too big for his face, grinning like the world had finally given him permission to be a kid again. The new treehouse wasn't just a rebuild. It was a statement. Double the size, reinforced with steel joints. Solar-powered lights strung along the rail. A flagpole at the top, where Evan raised a handmade flag. Justice lives here. When it went up, the whole block cheered. Later that night, as the sun dipped low and the cicadas started to sing, I sat on the porch with my sister. Evan had fallen asleep inside the treehouse, curled up with a flashlight and 3 comic books. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You think it's really over? She whispered. I looked at the glow of the lanterns strung across the yard, at the laughter drifting from neighbor to neighbor, at the silence where Karen's rage used to echo. Not over, I said, but something's begun. Because what happened here wasn't just about fences or bylaws. It was about who gets to belong, about who gets heard, protected, and seen. Karen thought she could erase that with a saw. But instead, she carved out something much bigger than she ever intended. A neighborhood that wakes up. A child who finds his courage. And a soldier who kept his promise not on a battlefield but on a quiet street in Georgia. So if you're listening to this, maybe late at night, maybe from a place where injustice feels louder than hope, let me say this. You are not alone. You are not powerless. And the treehouse will always be rebuilt. Stronger. Brighter. Together. This was our story. But it could be yours next. And when it is, I hope you build something no one dares tear down.